All right, today is Tuesday, the 10th of November. I'm going to go over this example that I've written and passed out to everyone. This is the guessing game in Java, and then we're going to look at starting to work on it in as an Android app. All right, this is done very similarly. I don't remember which one I did first. If I did this, I think I did the C one first, and then came back because I couldn't remember how to check for strings. All right, so I had to remember that. But it works pretty much the same way. All right, have the two constants as we did before. Created all the variables. Remember, since I only have main in here and main is static, that every variable that plays with main, so to speak, has got to be static. And so did all of the other routines that I put in here. All right. Anybody have any idea I'm asking this? So if you look up on the screen here, notice main says public static void main. Okay. But play the game, show the rules, clear the board, generate random number, make guess, show results, and play again. Every one of those I made private. Any idea why I might do that? Yeah, they are only needed in the class. All right, main could be called technically from another program, but the rest of the stuff that's in here, all right. So again, set up the same way. Again, same variables and everything. Main, as long as you want to play again, play the game, which calls show the rules and clear the board, just like we had in the C class. All right. And then when you got done, if the current guess was not equal to the secret number, call make guess again, and then ask the user if they want to play the game again. In fact, you can see what a great job I did here. I didn't even change that to Java. All right, which I should have, but no problem. All right. It's about as GUI as I could make it without going in and actually writing a GUI. So, again, you'll notice that if I run this, oops. Oh, not from there, though. Hard to run that Java program from inside of Notepad. Yeah, here it is. All right, run. So again, welcome now to the Java because I fixed that. You know, secret number 50, too low. 75, too low. 87, too low. 99, too low. That doesn't look good. 100. All right, took me 5 guesses. All right, I can run it again, but I think you all get the gist. I actually think that's enough. All right, so I'm going to close this. And after I close it, I've got another one here that this is the one we're going to look at and start building right now. It's called Guessing Game. I want to make sure I've got it the right one up here, that's all. Guessing Game Android, and I believe this is the right one. We're going to look in just a second. And I think that's right. Again, we're going to find out. I'm going to run it. I actually started working on it, and then I had a problem with it, and it's almost done, but we're going to see if we have the same problem that I had, okay, as we build this as a class. So, yeah, I was smart enough to start this up a long time ago. Again, as we go through this, if you don't like the colors I used, if you don't like the names I used, that's your call, but my code is going to be using the stuff that I put in. So like I said, if you want to change something, you'll be able to change it. I'll let that sit and think about it for a while. And we'll start looking at some of the other stuff that's in here. All right. I literally tried to come up with, how do I put this? I mean, I literally tried to come up with almost a clone of the one that was in Swift. All right, as far as the way it looks. Now, you might look at that, yeah, great. And you might say, no, it doesn't look anything like it. Well, then let's do this. I'll go to main activity, activity main, graphical. Come on. So there it is. Like I said, you can see the colors and stuff that I used in it. It's not fantastic, but it was meant to at least somewhat mimic what you saw before in the Swift class. So I've got a label up here, label here, a text, whatever it's called here, label here, text, label text, and the buttons. So again, it was set up basically the same way. And when I set that up, and we'll look at this strings.xml file in just a minute, literally everything that's in here, I tried to set it up where I put all the string stuff in the strings.xml file. I also created, I literally went in, I didn't know if this would work or not, but I tried it. I Googled Packer green and gold. Of course, they were actually in there. All right, so that's what these are. Okay. But if we look and take it from the top here, this is the stuff I had in the strings file. So if you'd like to, I'd appreciate it if you'd start up a new project, a new Android project. Again, I called mine Guessing Game, but I called mine Guessing Game Android, but you can call it basically anything you want. And remember that when you come in here and you do your file, new, all right, I'm gonna not actually run through this, but so again, if you call yours Guessing Game Android, I mean, I'm gonna get an error message because I already have one by that name, but 2, for example, remember that the required SDK should be 16, taking for granted that Mr. Wanda is going to, if I make a mistake, he's going to correct me. Some of you don't have the Android 6.0, so I've just been doing the 5.1.1 for everything. All right. Now, when I ran through and did this, it's interesting because you saw that I ran this and the program immediately stopped. It puked out. All right, so I'm going to create a new one too. I've got the code, but I'm going to create a new one too. And the reason I think it might be pooping out is what I tried to do is I tried using what's called a table layout, which consists of rows and columns. All right, but what I did stupidly was I started jacking around with the linear layout that you get at the beginning. And my guess is, and even though I look for it and can't find it, someplace it's still referencing that linear layout. And that's why it's giving me the error message, and my program is pooping out as soon as it starts running. All right, but you should have all this stuff, everything else in there should be okay. I'm taking for granted everybody's got that. No, that should be 5.1. Yeah. Again, not all of you have 5.1, so, or 6.0 rather, so. All right. So once all that stuff is set up, just click next. Again, this page that's right here, if you want more information that's on this page that I'm able to give you, which is basically nothing. Again, always check here and make sure. The first thing I'm going to ask us to do come spring is to go and create a folder out on our virtual desktop that's called Android. And we're going to put everything in there. All right? But make sure that your location is set up correctly. I put an article out there in the in-class folder a week or 2 weeks ago that explains in depth what each thing that's in here does. All right? So if you've done that, you can click Next again. This is the other thing, what I tried to do in here, just so you know. I went out online, show you what I did. And I went out to Google Images and I thought, what the hell? So I typed in Guessing Game. All right. And I grabbed that one right there. And then I got online and it said, okay, you can have a medium DPI or whatever it's called, an HDPI, XHDPI, yeah, that's right, and XXHDPI, and a triple X HDPI, all right? And the sizes on those, I believe this is like 48 by 48. I think this one's 72 by 72. I think that one's 96 by 96. And these two are both 100 something by 100 something. There's also another one that that usually doesn't get mentioned. It's not in there, but literally I'm going to call it GPS, and that stands for not Geographical Positioning System. It's for the Google Play Store. Because what they actually want, if you're going to submit something, is they want one that's 512 by 512. All right? If you try taking this and scaling it, or just doing it directly as a 512, it looks like you're looking at it cross-eyed. All right? It just looks really, really bad. But what I did was I grabbed this, then I went out and found a program online, okay? And it was a free thumbnail generator. But a lot of the thumbnail generators, like Make a Thumbnail is a good generator, but it only gives you certain sizes. 100 by 100, 150 by 150, 200 by 200, I think 300 by 300, something like that. So I went and found another one. I wanted it to be free, all right? I got to watch it because last time I did that, there was malware in it. So I really screwed up the system bad by doing that, okay? And I didn't want to go and tell the guys from IT, so I cleaned it out myself. All right, well, we'll see if there's any ramifications with that. But I found one, and I literally took this and made it in all those sizes, okay? And then what I did was I basically tried to put it in for each one of these, all right? So that was a small one, boom, 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 etc. That might be where my problem was. I don't know, all right? But I've done that before, and I haven't had a problem when I tried to do it. So long story short, or short story long, just leave it the way it is, all right? Click Next again. That gets us to here. Remember that virtually everything that we'll do in this class and in the advanced class, we'll choose blank activity. So click Next again. This is where you've got a little bit of leeway in here. I'm going to suggest for now just keeping that name, all right? And this will be the name of your XML file for all of your activity. So it'll be activity_main.xml, and this at the top of your program will say public class, and it'll have that, it'll have main activity in there. So again, for now, I just recommend leaving it the way it is, and then clicking Finish. All right, that's what you get. So by by the end of the day today, or the end of the period, what I'd like us to do is to have that take that and turn that into this. Does that make sense? Now, we're actually going to do this particular program twice. And what I mean is, we're going to do it the first time the way we've been doing it. So we're going to build the strings file. We're going to build this thing exclusively using XML, okay? And then we'll put the code in. Then we're going to go back and create it again, but we're going to do almost no XML. So you can see the difference between the two ways of doing it, and hopefully come up with a way that you think is the better way for you. And the better way for you might be a hybrid. In other words, you might use some working with the XML file and some not, all right? And as we work on this, what we start with, it really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to start with a strings.xml file. So like I said, I'm going to give you my strings.xml file. But let's take a look at what's in here before we go, okay? And start on it. Again, that's our XML header. All this stuff has to be between beginning resources and ending resources tags, all right? The stuff that you see here, here, and here, these three lines, those were all generated by the system. I really don't need that hello world anymore, so I can get rid of it. All right? But you shouldn't go dinking with this app name, and you shouldn't go dinking with that action settings. All right? Now, I'm telling you that, and if you go, well, screw you, I'm doing it anyway. Okay, then you're doing it anyway. But if you do it anyway and it doesn't work, I'd go back and look at that. All right? So if we look in here, this is what I wanted to show you. All right, so this is what I'm going to leave this up here in just a second, but I want to show you, and I want to take all the stuff that's here and map that back to what's here. All right. So the first thing I wanted to show you is I've got the guessing game that's 1 through 100. But if you notice in here, what I put in there was an HTML entity. I did not put in a hyphen. The system didn't like it when I put a regular hyphen in there. All right, so I tried doing it a couple ways. There's something that's called an end dash, and that's the other name for it. It didn't like the end dash in there. So I went online and started looking, and every single example that they showed, instead of having end dash, they put that. So I changed my end dash to that, and lo and behold, it worked fine. All right, if you don't know this, anytime that you have an HTML entity, for instance, you should have worked with these in previous classes. LT, GT, amp, for ampersand. So you know what I'm talking about, right? If you go online and you look up HTML entities, for each time there's an HTML entity like this, they'll show it like this. Then they'll also show it like this, with some kind of a hex code. All right, so what I'm telling you is that way didn't work in here, but the hex code did. All right, so then notice I also have guess, status, and number of guesses. All right, so there's guess, there's status, and there's number of guesses, just so you can see what's what here. All right. So that was the heading up on top too, okay? So then we've got make guess, rules, clear, exit, and new game. Right here in lines 13 through 17. Well, what are those? Well, hopefully it makes sense. Those are the 5 buttons. All right, I even took the text in the buttons and set up all that stuff like this. All right, I tried to totally internationalize this program as much as I possibly could. All right. Hints. You can set hints up inside of your particular boxes here. These are edit texts. All right. So the show guess, show status, and show number of guesses, those were set up right here. Then finally, I set up a couple things for color that I call Packer Green and Packer Gold. There's different ways that you can set up colors, just so you know. When next semester, I don't know, we probably won't get that far this semester, but next semester what you'll notice is there is another file that's called colors.xml. So we'll work with that one. For now, this is fine. All I'm trying to tell you is if you go out and look at a lot of things online, sometimes they do it this way. Sometimes they use colors.xml. All right? And hopefully this makes sense. All right? This gray here, that pound D3, 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 I just go online and I look for, look at different hex color things. Oops. But just so you know, that thing, that is this color that's in here. All right? The green, and there's the gold. So what I'd like you to do is open up your strings.xml file and make yours look the way mine looks. You're not going to see a lot of big changes on the screen, except your background color should change. And if you keep the hello world there, that's going to change. It's going to be green now. All right? But I'll give you a couple minutes. It's what, 10:25. I'll give you like about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay? We'll get down through here, and then I'll move it down a little bit down to the bottom. Everybody understand what I'm saying? All right. We'll take a break soon after that, and after the break, we're going to go in and I'm going to show you how you can build this thing using the table layout. All right? again, if you're not that fleet a typist, this is being taped, so you can always go back and change it, or add to it or whatever later if you spell something wrong or whatever. Last thing, if you didn't hear this, if you came in late or whatever this morning, or you weren't in the morning class, I did go I did go out this morning and I taped. There is now a tape out there for a PHP for the loan amortization program. All right, it's got all that stuff is out there. There's a folder out there in the in-class folder where I gave you the CSS file, but you're responsible for keying in the index.php and the display results.php file. All right, it's about a 55-minute tape. All right. Depending on how I feel tonight, I'm going to go in. There's 3 more I have to do in there, and that's the leap year, the prime number, and leap year, prime number, and the guessing game one. All right, so those will be done by no later than tomorrow or Thursday. All right, so all that stuff will be out there. I just want to show you, if you look up on the screen here, see that? That is the icon. I don't know if you can see that from right there or not, but that is it, the one I showed you. Supposed to remind you too, I think tomorrow's the first day that they're opening it up for registration, if it's not open already.
Open this morning.
What's that?
Open this morning.
It opened this morning? Okay, thank you. And I'm supposed to remind you that there's a Veterans Day presentation tomorrow at noon in the Commons if you're interested. This stuff, remember right here, the stuff that's in blue right now, that's all stuff that should have been there automatically. You don't have to touch that. So I should be able to move this down to right here. And the reason for that is now you can see everything. All right, so this, like I said, the stuff here, if you say I'm behind, no you aren't, because that stuff you should have had there already. But if I move this down, now you should be able to see everything that's there. I don't hear a lot of typing. Is everybody just about finished with that?
I'm almost done.
Just the first three lines, it has guessing game, Android, and hello world. Then leave it alone.
That's fine. Yeah, you should never mess with the app name and the action settings. You could remove the Hello World one if you wanted to, but it's not hurting anything to keep it there. All right, it sounds like now everybody's just about finished, but if you look up on the screen here, okay, this is, again, what you get by default, right? This is when you start up a new project, this is what you get. And if you go over to the actual, so this is the graphical layout, and if you go over to the activity main, there's a bunch of stuff in here. You'll notice that by default, it's set up to be a relative layout. All right, it tells you where to use the XML namespace tools, and it sets a bunch of stuff in here. Again, if you weren't here last week, we talked about match parent, and we talked about wrap content, okay? And it's basically, is it gonna take as much room as it possibly can, or just as much room as it needs? All right? They set some stuff up here. These are all defaults, just so you know, all that stuff. Everything that's in here is just set up as a default. And this is the text view with the hello world in it. So if you did remove that hello world line, and you didn't remove the text view from your screen, you'll probably have an error message there right now. All right? Again, what happens when you run an Android program is the system goes in before it even looks at your code, and it looks at all the stuff that's in those XML files, and it does what's called inflating them. And what it's doing then is it's making sure that what you put in the XML file maps up to what you're about to put into the code. All right, I can't put it any other way than that. Maybe that's not well put, I don't know. But what we want to do is, instead of that activity main, we want this one. All right, and it's going to be pretty big, as you'd probably realize. All right, so when you look in here, that's mine. So there's a lot of stuff. Now, don't worry about typing it in yet or anything like that, but just take a look up here. That's what I'd like you to do. I removed the tools line. It didn't seem like it mattered whether I had it in or not. You can leave it in. But once we get to that point, I want to talk about the stuff that's in here. All right, not yet, but eventually. And then, as you can see, when you've got your layout to be a table layouts are made up of table rows. And then these are the columns that are in those rows. So there's one column there. There's two columns here. There's two columns here. There's two columns here, etc. There's two columns here. So you can see. And the reason I'm telling you this is when you look in here, for example, at the buttons. All right, so you got a table row with a bunch of stuff and buttons, etc. Watch out if you're going to do a lot of copying and pasting. I'm not saying you can't do it, but all of this stuff is predicated on you using names and having those names be unique. All right, so you say, well, what are you talking about, Jeff? I want you to learn from my mistakes. How's that? So when I go back here and I look at this in graphical layout mode, this is what we want to set up. We want it to be a table layout. And we want to be able to add table rows in here. All right? And you'll notice that the first table row has a text view with that heading, the guessing game 1 to 100. I didn't type any of that. That was all, again, grabbed from the strings.xml file. All right, but I had to set some settings for it. Then we've got table row 2 with the text view that says guess and the edit text, which is where we'll actually put our guess. All right, can you see how this stuff maps up? I mean, hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, but when you're doing this stuff, like I said, you can do it in 3 different ways. Literally, you can do this stuff in 3 ways. We're going to do it one of the ways right now, and that's to use the XML. If you don't want to do it using the XML, you can go over here, and if we go over here, we go to layouts, one of the layouts that's here says table layout on it. So you can drag a table layout over there, and under the table layout, they've got table rows. So you can drag a bunch of rows out there, and you can do it like that. I would recommend either doing it that way, or I would recommend using the XML. What you're going to find out is if you just start grabbing the individual controls and dragging them over here, which you can do, they're not going to be placed on the screen where you want them to be. And sometimes, you know, if you use the default sizing, what you're going to have is, like, for this edit text area, it's going to come out to here. And it's going to drive you nuts. All right? If you're anything like me, it's going to drive you nuts. So I've been building these more and more using the XML, or basically dragging the things out here onto the outline view. But you don't have to do it like that. All right? One more thing I just want to mention before we go. I'm just going to, before we take a break, I'm going to just click on this one just to show you this. All right, and even if you have the thing that says linear layout, you can click on it if you want, but you don't have to. All right, but I want to show you this, and that's if I right mouse click on here, notice that there's some edit stuff that's in here. And the first thing says edit ID. All right, that's its name. Does that make sense to everyone? Now, the reason I'm telling you this is probably when you start to name your controls, this is probably the way you want to do it, is to right mouse click on the control and use edit ID. The reason for that is another way that you can do it is with that highlighted like it is, come on, I can go down to my properties area that's right here, and you notice I've also got it here. And I can click on there. All right, and I can click on there and bring up the same thing. Okay, but what you don't want to do is to go in here and manually start typing stuff in here. The reason you don't want to do that, I can guarantee you, sooner or later, you're going to forget that @ plus ID /. It's just natural. Everybody does it. And if you forget to put that in there, the stuff isn't being named correctly and it can't be recognized by Android. All right, so again, my recommendation is as you put stuff in, and you heard me say this back in the days of C#, when you create your controls, rename them right away. Just get used to doing that. Oh, I'll do it later. No, you won't. Because it's just human nature not to. Question?
What's the at plus ID mean?
Okay.
Is that just like in jQuery how you have the dollar sign?
Not exactly. Really, it's a way for the system to realize that it's an ID, for lack of better words.
Okay.
All right? I mean, there is a little bit more to it than that. It's not that you really have to know. It's just that's the syntax.
Okay.
Okay? Yes.
Yeah, I got the relative layout. Now, when you did the table layout, did you just delete?
Okay. That's I'm going to say that, and then we're going to take a break.
Okay.
All right? Okay. So Luke just brought up a good point. By default, you get a relative layout. That's what comes up. So you can right mouse click on it, and you can go down to where it has change layout. You can do that. That doesn't hurt anything. All right? Some books will tell you just totally remove it. I don't like having nothing up there on the screen. I just gives me a funky feeling. All right? So I recommend doing it that way. All right? The only other thing I want to mention, so again, if you want to do that right now, you can right mouse click. Yours says linear layout. You can right mouse click on here, choose change layout, and what comes up, okay, there's a drop down, and then just choose table layout. All right, that's what I'd recommend that you do. All right, so choose table layout and then click OK. I'm not going to do that because I've already got it set up to that. All right. There's one more thing I want to say, then we are taking a break. All right, so I'm taking for granted everybody was able to do that. That's going to not only change here, so it'll change it on here, but it'll also, if you go back into your activity main file, it should be changed there also. Now, sometimes when you do that, it doesn't change right away. You might have to save or you might have to refresh the screen. So if it doesn't look like it changes right away, don't let that really worry you. All right? Okay, the only other thing that I want to mention, and again, you don't have any of this stuff on the screen yet. It's okay, but I want to show this to you. All right? If you look, I'm just going to grab this where it says, so right there. So that's this. Notice when I click on here how it highlights it here? All right, and I'm going to right mouse click on it again. And notice now I've got two different things up at the top. I know you can see, you got a lot of things, so I know that. But these two, you should never be manually editing text in these things. That's why we use the strings.xml file. I'm going to say that, and at least one of you is going to say, just hit the hell with it. I'm going to do it that way. All right? If you're looking for reasons, once you start creating apps, if you're looking for reasons for the App Store to basically say, no, just reject them, that's a way. They're expecting protocols to be followed. They're not saying, Ben, do you like that protocol? Because they don't care. But they, and it's not as bad from what I can tell at the Google Play Store as it is with the App Store and Apple. At Apple, they'll admit it. They're looking for reasons to reject everything you send them. Everything. They want you to pay $99 a year, and then they want to reject you. I don't really get that philosophy, but that seems to be an Apple kind of thing. With the Google Play Store, it's $25 you pay once, and you're basically registered as a developer forever. And if you haven't heard, I mean, they're really overtaking Mac as far as the number of things. They got a great commercial that's out there right now if you haven't seen it. It's for the Samsung, for the phone, and it's to replace the Apple Pay, because these guys, they're just going through restaurants and stuff and paying for it, and then a guy comes in there with his iPhone, and it won't take it. So, I mean, it's getting pretty dirty in its own way. But what I'm telling you is, this is another way you can change that ID. I would not ever recommend it, just say, well, yeah, Jeff, but I also notice I click on it right here, and when I click on it, I get the blue background, I can change it that way. Usually if you do that, you won't have that at sign. All right? So there's a way that you can do things, or ways that you can do things, as opposed to ways that you probably should do things. That's what I'm trying to show you. There are going to be times in here when we go over something in this class or in the Swift class, either this semester or next semester. You're going to go, hey, do you know you can always also do it like this? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. All right? If you weren't here last week and you didn't see it, I have picked up books. All right? It's out there on the P drive, so if you do go out to the P drive, CIS, there's a folder out there that's called JPS Spring Books. And there's a folder under there that's called Spring 2016, and there's a folder under there that's called SEM 4, and that's where your books are. All right? The reason I'm telling you that, and most of you already know because you were here last week, but the book for the Android class isn't bad. It's about 500 pages. I've got books by the same author, and about maybe not a third, but maybe a quarter of that book is on learning Android Studio. And you're going to be learning Android Studio in spring. We're not using Eclipse anymore, all right? Because it's not recommended that you use Eclipse. Why? Who owns Android?
Google.
Okay. Who made Android Studio? Google. Who made Eclipse? Not Google. So that's why they're recommending that you don't use it. So the book that's out there, the one that I'm going to use for the class, the follow-up class to this one. Again, if I go out to the P drive, CIS, JPS Spring Books, Spring 2016, Semester 4. All right. Notice the same author, Neil Smythe or Smith. I don't know what it is. I don't care. But this is the one for the Android class. All right, it's going to bring it up, but it brings it up on in Amazon. So if I click on that and I go to Table of Contents, I just wanted to show you this. Introduction. Chapter 2, Setting Up the Android Development Environment. Chapter 3, Creating an Example App in Android Studio. We're going to do all that the first day, or at least the first week. Chapter 4, A Tour of the Android Studio User Interface. Chapter 5, Creating a Virtual Device in Android Studio. Chapter 6, Testing Android Studio Apps on a Physical Device. We're going to be doing all this stuff. Will we go over every chapter in this book? We'll go over as much of it as possible. I will guarantee you that after like the 9-week point, at least one period per week after the halfway point, probably Thursdays, because those are a good day that people like, I'm not coming then. Then Thursdays will probably end up being a lab period for this class and for the other class. All right? And the other book, that's this one. Fortunately or unfortunately, this is a lot bigger one. There's about 700 or 800 pages in it, but if I go through this, there's over 100 chapters. So each chapter averages about 7 pages. Can we cover the entire book? You're good enough. Yeah, we could. Should we? I don't know. So I'll start covering it at a certain depth and breadth of coverage and speed of coverage, and you're going to have to let me know you're going way too fast or you're going way too slow. But I will promise you that the first day of class in the Android class, I'm going to lecture in there, but the second day, at least part of the second day, it's going to be, okay, let's build this project, boom. Now play with Android Studio so you start to get a comfort level with it. Hopefully the same kind of comfort level that you've got with Eclipse. All right, so let's take a break. Let's come back at 11:10, please.